Out here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned, immaculate.
Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest. This week it's going to be the turn of the guitarist and composer, songwriter, artist. It is the one and only Andy Moor, one-time member of the Dog Faced Hermans, and also is currently a member of the X and has been in various other musical combos over the last few decades. Anyway, this is the interview, so after several minutes of casual but happy chat, we got down to that very exciting subject that was the early formative years. Andy, tell us everything, tell us now.
Actually, the first thing that happened is I bought a record player off a guy, and it was like for £5. And with the record player, I got 10 records as well. And Changes by David Bowie was in it.
Right.
Aladdin Sane. The Baker Gurvitz Army. I don't know if you remember the with Ginger Baker. And a couple of other things I can't remember. And Queen. I just listened to these 10 records for because that's all I had. I didn't have much money then. I don't know how old I was, maybe 15 or 16. I don't know. So that was my first kind of experience of listening to my own records. And then I discovered John Peel.
Yes, well, that was very handy. And did you come from a slightly musical house? Did your parents listen to music at all?
My mother was an opera singer.
Was she?
So, yeah. So there was always music in the house. Actually, she was learning classical guitar, and then she decided to become an acupuncturist. And because of that, she had to stop playing, because you have to feel people's pulses to test their kind of health, and so your fingertips need to be totally sensitive. Yeah. So she gave up playing guitar and she gave it to me. So that's actually how I started playing. I got my mum's classical guitar.
Yes, it's all about those energy lines, aren't they, of your body, I think.
Yeah.
So yes, there you go. And did she stick with did she stick with it?
Yeah. I got an electric guitar then, and then I sort of started listening to all this. Well, actually, listening to John Peel really changed a lot. And then I went to Edinburgh to study, and I met this guy, Colin, and he was DJing one night, and he was just playing an incredible amount of music that I'd never heard before, and all of it was amazing. And I went up to him and said, "What is this music?" And he said, "Just come round once and I'll play." And I went around to his house, and he gave me about 100 LPs to take home over the whole summer. I just met him for the first time, and he just said, "Borrow these and listen to this." And it was James Brown, The Contortions, Ornette Coleman. It was like it was a lot of black music also. And I just spent the whole summer listening to that. And I think that was the biggest musical kind of explosion that happened in my head.
My God, that's so trustworthy. Trust him.
Yeah, and he still like turns me on to new music. Like he says, "Listen to this," and he's still doing it now. Like he lives in Amsterdam as well, so we still exchange like music all the time. Yeah, he was in Dog Faced Hermans. He was the bass player.
Blimey! So he obviously trusted you greatly to sort of just give you 100 records.
I couldn't believe it. And I also discovering The Contortions was really I listened to that record a lot. This record called "Bye," The Contortions, and I just thought it was crazy. Like the slide guitars on it, I just thought that's mental. And Sonic Youth also. That's also a bit discovering all. Yeah, that kind of big. That was a big. What do you call that? An epiphany or something?
Yes. Well, I suppose I grew up. I had another brother who was 7 years older than me, and he was just perfect for prog rock in so many ways. I grew up in the countryside, so that feels like culturally you're sort of in a bit of a barren landscape, aren't you? Punk never got to the countryside at all, really.
Yeah.
But I sort of. We grew up in a house which I suppose my parents were very working class. So, when they got their property together in the late 50s, they were a generation who never borrowed money, so they just sold all their stuff. So we didn't get a record player in the house until the early 70s. And like you, in a way, there was no records, and then there was a record player, and then my brother got Sergeant Pepper, and he got Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, and I just played these all the time, you know. And then he started bringing other records in, and then you play, oh yes, or Genesis or Wishbone Ash, and the solo work of Rick Wakeman, you know, and with great enthusiasm. And then you think, and then like you, John Peel suddenly started to appear in my life, because it was like, where do you hear new music? And someone said, oh, you listen to John Peel, and it's like, and the first time it was, I remember it was Wire and I Am the Fly, and I thought, God, this is a bit weird. This is a bit strange, isn't it? I'm not sure if I like it, but it's kind of interesting. And then, you know, you start hearing more and more, and then you put your sort of trusty TDK D90 cassette in and start recording it, and sort of scribbling on this kind of cover, like, oh yeah, there's a really good track on here somewhere by somebody you can't remember. Yeah, it was just kind of an exploration. It was a kind of a nerdy fascination. So yeah, for me, it was good. So when did you,
John Peel used to do this Festive 50
the Festive 50, my God, did we record those ones?
Yeah. I think all my friends have like stacks of those from every year. But there was another radio show before John Peel called Your Mother Wouldn't Like It. Do you remember that?
No.
I think it was called Your Mother Wouldn't Like It. And he used to play Mummies Weekly, and it was just like Led Zeppelin, this kind of, it was more sort of old dinosaurs of rock, and that was the kind of first radio. But I already kind of knew that music, and I kind of was getting bored of it. So when John Peel, it wasn't when John Peel came along, he was already there. I just discovered him at a certain point. It was a totally different sound, like, you know, all this stuff that sounded really raw, and also such a weird, you know, he played so many different styles. If you think now of all the different all the genres of the radio, like in England, like all the different radio shows, John Peel played all that stuff, and now you have one DJ for each style.
Yes,
he covered it all.
Well, it was quite fortunate, because though I like indie pop, I sort of realised I get quite, you know, to be honest, I get quite bored of listening to the same specialist show. So I would try and listen to a reggae show, but I'd get bored. But John Peel, like you said, you know, he'd play an indie track, but then he'd play the Bundy Boys, then he'd play, you know, an early Public Enemy or Steady B or Roxy Chante or, you know, Thomas McFumo or Martin Sebastian and you know, all this Bulgarian folk music. And it really really is good for my personality or character, because it's like, yeah, I really like that, because if I got the whole album, which I would do, I'd listen to a bit and think, I'm a bit bored now. But you know, there was just like, and the rap music was exactly like that. You'd get the album, you say, oh my God, there's only one good track, and John Peel played the damn thing. The rest of it.
That's the thing. He played the good tracks as well. I mean, he was eclectic, and he played the really good stuff.
Yeah, so there was, you know, that Gregory Isaacs, Dennis Brown, you know, all that kind of Sly and Robbie stuff, all that was just like unbelievable. So being a person of that age at that time, you know, all those gigs I went to were just all basically, oh yeah, John Peel played, I'll go and see Sly and Robbie and the Taxi Gang tonight, and I'll go and see the Bundu Boys, and you know, you turn up and think, oh my God, that was, you know, it was kind of happening, wasn't it, as they say. So
and the great thing was through all that, he played the full. He continuously played the full. You know, all these different sort of styles of music went through, and then he always went back to the full, which I thought was great. That was really like a sort of reference point. Right up until the end, I guess he played.
Yes, but the other thing that he did, just kind of slightly on that subject, was that he also introduced me to a lot of kind of 50s and 60s soul music on the Kent record label. I even went and bought some of those kind of collections, and Ella Washington and Irma Thomas, and he would, or Aaron Neville. I remember him going and playing an Aaron Neville track, and I remember kind of had to scribble it, go and buy it, you know. So it wasn't just like, you know, he did pick that up, and then he did, you know, Captain Beefheart and, you know, various other people. So there were those kind of very like interesting moments that you just thought, okay, it was an education, but it was just brilliant that he didn't just stick to one genre. So I was quite relieved, really, because even though I did love indie pop, there's just so much of it you can cope with, really.
You're right.
So look, then, so in the early 80s, you know, late 79, Thatcher gets in.
Yeah.
You know, we have the Falkland War, then we have, you know, the miners' strike, Greenham Common, then there was Red Wedge, you know, and a lot of bands I've interviewed, you know, their early formative time was kind of, you know, being unemployed on, you know, claiming dole, job seekers allowance, enterprise allowance schemes. So did you have a slightly kind of similar world of those kind of that setup, I suppose, which kind of brought a lot of bands together, including Big Flame.
Exactly that. I mean, it wasn't slightly; it was exactly that. I mean, we were students, so we had grants for a while, and then once we stopped being students, we didn't have grants anymore, and we all went on the dole. And then there was this year where you had the enterprise allowance, where you could get 40 quid a week?
You could, but you had to get £1,000 in the bank somehow, didn't you?
Yeah, I can't remember that bit. I don't know where I would have got 1,000 quid for. I don't remember that.
A lot of people said they just passed the same 1,000 quid around to say.
Maybe we did that. Yeah, I totally forgot about that. So for me, it was like, and so I got sometimes a bit of stick for being on the dole, just not looking for a job, and I just said, I'm an artist. This is my subsidy. And we were working hard. It wasn't like we were doing nothing. We were rehearsing and really doing tons and tons of stuff, but we were earning such little money that we wouldn't have survived without that 40 quid a week. That really helped us at the time. Sorry, let me switch that up. So for me, that was really... And that lasted until I moved to Holland in the 90s.
Right, okay.
Not the enterprise allowance, but the dole money. We managed to sort of keep that going until I moved to Holland.
Yes, there's a lot of TVP, tins of tomatoes.
I have no idea how we managed to survive, because we used to get like 30 quid for a gig or something, and we were touring quite a bit, but we had nothing. We didn't have... We had a van. We managed to get a van somehow, a tranny van, of course, and we toured mostly all over England, but really coming back with not much money, and but somehow managed to survive.
Well, most bands. Right. I mean, I remember Fast Eddie from Motorhead saying that when they first started, they would sometimes not have any money to get back from a gig, so they would have to slightly sabotage their van and then phone the AA just to get them back, because they had literally no money. Or a member of the Wolfhound saying they went to Scotland, Glasgow, for a gig, and they turned up and it was like, it's cancelled, but we've got no money. So they had to just literally start busking for a week to get some cash. So it's really hard to imagine.
Sounds romantic, eh?
I think it is when you're in your late teens and early 20s. I think that's when you... Yeah. But it was like, as Fast Eddie said, there was just absolutely, you wouldn't believe how little money there was. There was just, I think he said there was not pot to piss in or something. That was his term. So yes, there was absolutely, you're just scraping by, weren't you, really, sort of waiting for sort of, what's it, happy hour at the pub so you can go and get warm for an hour.
Yeah.
And
and maybe being in Scotland, we because this whole scene of bands that we were sort of part of, it felt to me like that was really from the Midlands, really from like Manchester, and we were way up in Scotland, so we were kind of a bit geographically a bit detached from it. Coming all the way down was quite an operation for us. So for quite a while, we were just playing in Edinburgh and Glasgow and small places up in Scotland. And then slowly we started discovering, actually through musicians' collectives. There seemed to be musicians' collectives in some of these places. And through that, we slowly started coming down south and playing in northern England first, and then eventually in London and stuff.
Yes. And when did you form the band? I mean, were you sort of, how did it all gravitate together?
Well, it started, the band was first, it started as a band called Volunteer Slavery, which is a Roland Kirk song.
Yes.
And that was 6 of us, and we were just hitting oil barrels. This was like in 83 or 84. We were just like, literally we had 3 oil barrels at the front of the stage, which we would all be bashing. We were switching all instruments. There was horns, and it was just a kind of improvised racket. But it was really fun, and the audience joined in. And then that stopped, and 3 or 4 of the band members from that, we decided to then, okay, let's play guitar and drum, a kind of more normal instrumentation. And it seemed that the best songs were the ones where I played guitar and Colin played bass. So we ended up with that formation. But it happened a bit like that. We just discovered that was the best combination. The trumpet player and singer, Marion, she really came. She played trumpet, but she didn't come out of the sort of jazz world at all. She came out of the, what's it called? I've forgotten what the name of the organisation is. very Christian organization.
Oh, right. Okay.
So that she was really playing trumpet. There was more like hymns and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. So that also for me that made it really special because she played really catchy melodies and tunes, and she had great lyrics. And she wasn't really expecting to be. She was an art student. She wasn't expecting to be in a band or expecting to sing. That was a nice thing about it. It sort of grew a bit. Salvation Army. That's it.
The Salvation Army.
That's where she came out of. Yeah. The tunes.
Yes.
That's where she learned to play anyway.
Yes, the happy wing of the Christian movement. But were you a little bit influenced or aware of that kind of New York kind of no wave scene that had been developing?
Yeah. That's what I mean. Colin, he gave me this record, the one that Brian Eno produced, but that has all these crazy bands on it. And my favorite one on it was the Contortions, and also this Contortions record. So that really influenced us in the beginning. But we also heard all the Ron Johnson stuff quite early because we started a bit later, and we heard all this Ron Johnson stuff and Bogshed and the Membranes, and we sort of started getting in contact with them. We organised gigs for them up in Edinburgh also. So it happened quite fast. But we also listened to a lot of improvised and free jazz and African music. There was a great place in Edinburgh called the Queen's Hall. An art ensemble of Chicago played there. Don Cherry played there. Like all these amazing free jazz players from the 60s and 70s came up to Edinburgh and played in this one place. And we saw like tons of that stuff. So that also went into our music.
Yes.
And African music, a lot of African music, especially East African music. And I don't know, it was a big mess of stuff, which I thought was great, that it wasn't just, we weren't stuck in a kind of corner or something.
That was quite ambitious, isn't it? I mean, it's like bringing so many little bits of, like different worlds together. Must have been, was it exciting but sometimes frustrating? Did you know what you were doing?
No. Not at all. It never felt ambitious. It just felt like we love this, so it'll be in our music. We didn't try to play like these jazz guys because they were just amazing. We just took a bit, we just listened to that stuff, so it kind of filtered into our music. I mean, we couldn't play. We were teaching ourselves as we went along. We would make a song, and the way we learned to play it was by playing it live 100 times.
Right. That's it. That's always the key, isn't it? Just rehearsing. That's it, really.
Yeah.
So when you finished your degree, was music just going to be your main occupation at that stage? You weren't doing.
I didn't finish my degree.
You didn't finish it?
I quit because I wanted to play music, so I stopped after 2.5 years. I was studying social anthropology, and actually I was studying ethnomusicology but it wasn't on the syllabus, and so I realized that was what I was interested in. But if I tried to study that, I wouldn't pass the exam, so I kind of gave up. But there was a library in Edinburgh full of African music, and I used to go there and just record tons of the stuff. So, I mean, that's what I spent quite a bit of my anthropology time doing, just listening to African music mostly.
Yes.
And I quit after 2.5 years, and then we just started really playing all the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite something, because that must have been just before Easter, with only just a few more months to go, or Christmas.
No, 4 years. 4 years in Edinburgh.
Oh, okay. It wasn't quite so dry. I thought, crikey.
No.
That was an interesting one.
And actually, in the third year, you do field work. So I did kind of miss what would have been the best bit of it, which is going in the field. But by then, I also just thought, I didn't really know what I was going to do. And I just thought I wanted to do music, and I couldn't do music. So because of that, I just, I said to my lecturer, he said, what do you want to do for your fieldwork? And I said, well, I'm really interested in the talking drums from Ghana.
Mm.
They communicate, with this drum where you change the tone. And he said to me, you've been watching too many Tarzan films, Andy. and I thought, okay, this is it. I've got to stop this. I don't know if he was right or not, but I just thought, fuck this. I'm not doing this anymore.
Yes, I can't remember who it was, but there was the drummer from the Grateful Dead was particularly keen on a lot of those kind of rhythms, wasn't he? I believe. Anyway, that's the truth. So then, when did you start to sort of get into the studio with the band? I mean, this is often a big step for any band to try
Yeah.
and sort of capture their sound, because obviously this is when it gets a bit more serious.
Yeah, that happened actually quite early because Wilf, the drummer, had a friend in Cambridge who had a studio, a really great studio. So we went down there really early, like we'd hardly made a live set yet, and recorded a bunch of stuff and released a single quite quick.
Oh my God, was that Space
After
Ward?
only, sorry?
Was that Space Ward Studios in Cambridge?
No, it's called, I can't remember what it was called. Maybe it's on here. I'm just looking at one of the records.
Yeah, look at the records. If in doubt, just look at the records.
I can't remember what it's called. Wilf's really good at this. It was called Maca Studios by a guy called Davy Graham, and we recorded 8 songs there, and 3 were good, and we put them on a 7-inch single.
Blimey, that's good. And when did I was going to say, when did John Peel pick up on the band?
Well, we sent that single immediately. We sent it to John Peel, and he played it, and we went crazy. For us, that was just like, we were super excited, and he also laughed because the labels were put on back to front, and he mentioned that, and he gave us a session,
The famous John Peel session, which is always like, you've made it then, haven't you? Really, let's face it.
But that's what was so great about all that music that we were playing, is that all those bands were played by John Peel, which was BBC National Radio, and you got a bit of money from that, and it kind of gave you a little. It didn't make you famous, but it gave you a little step. You could get gigs a bit easier after that, and you'd sell a few singles. You still did. We sold 1,000 of this single.
Yes.
Single.
And actually, the thing is, and what I've realised with that period and probably into the 90s, is that there were the kind of the gatekeepers. We had sort of, 3 weekly music papers, didn't we? NME, Melody Maker, Sounds, which had huge circulations. The John Peel show, and there was also people like Janice Long and Kid Jensen, and also every town, city, especially small town, would have an alternative indie night of some description, or something kind of, on a Monday, Tuesday or Wednesday when no one else wanted to sort of book it. So there was kind of ability to just kind of start, playing in front of people who weren't just any of your, friends and family and anybody else you can emotionally blackmail to go and see you. So it was quite important, those little key steps. Otherwise you're not getting out of the rehearsals, are you? And bickering about, I don't know, stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you get it. We always thought that was that you have a massive learning curve from your first gig. If you make a new set, still, even now, like when we're rehearsing, we make 10 songs, and you try it out at the first gig, and you go back into the rehearsal room, and you just shift them and adjust them, because you learn so much from playing it live. You learn how it works with the audience and how it feels to play it as well.
Yes, this is true. This is what happened to the Beatles. I mean, they had their sort of apprenticeship. Well, the Cabin Club in Hamburg, they did all those live gigs, and that all adds up, doesn't it? And even more bizarrely, I did an interview with the guitarist with Twisted Sister. I didn't like the band, but he's done a book, and he's a really engaging guy. But they spent 10 years just playing every night, because actually they couldn't get a record label. But they said, it really does make you a good musician, and it makes you realize how what songs are going to work or what songs aren't going to work. And it's the kind of apprenticeship, and until you've got that under your belt, you're not really able to know what's going to come off or not.
Yeah, I saw a gig that we did after 40 dates playing in the States, and it was like maybe the 38th gig. I saw it on YouTube not long ago, and I thought we must have been knackered by then. But we were like playing great, because we'd played that set 38 times in 38 days, and it was so tight. And actually, I'm not so interested in music being really tight. In the end, it's not the music I listen to. I actually like music that's played. It can be played quite sloppy. It has to have something else than that. But it was quite funny to see how I really thought that we would have played really badly after 38 gigs, because we were playing the same songs. But actually, it was quite an eye opener. I was amazed that we could play so well, and we were actually playing faster and faster just to make it, because I don't know, after playing that many times in a row, you think, okay, I've got to play this song again. So we make it interesting by playing it faster. So it got ridiculously fast at a certain point. But
Well, it does impress the crowd. And did your guitar playing style, did that change much over that period?
I was really influenced by the Gang of Four and Captain Beefheart. When I saw Greg from Big Flame, that really blew my brains. I just thought, and then when I saw Thurston playing from Sonic Youth, we went through with the Finney Tribe. Actually, we went through to Glasgow to watch them, and I think it was when Evol just came out.
Yes,
and I didn't know how Sonic Youth played. I just heard the records, and I thought it sounded great, but I didn't. And I saw Thurston putting drumsticks in and bashing it with another drum, and I just thought, oh, you're allowed to do that with your guitar. So after that. I started messing about, also putting things in my guitar, sort of, and so that was a big change. And then, you said you interviewed Dunstan once.
yes,
Dunstan from Chumbawamba. One time we didn't have our van was broken down, so Dunstan came up with the Chumbawamba van because he would drive bands around to earn some extra money, and he drove us on tour. And he said, "Have you ever seen the X play?" And we said, "No." And he says, "Because Andy, you play." Like you're like a mirror image of Terry playing, but I'd never seen him play. And then when I saw them and saw Terry playing, I just thought, whoa, it was a whole other, I was kind of shocked also. And it wasn't this brilliant technical, there was not fiddling about loads of notes. There was just a kind of commitment and an energy and a really simple, direct sound that just, actually it made me simplify how I play. I just thought, this is so much more effective because, there's no point playing 57 notes. You may as well just give it, you have to sort of give a shape and a sound and a sort of dynamic and a tension and an energy. And the X seemed to be so good at that. So that was a big moment for me. And then I got to join them.
And then, yes, I know.
I got to join my favourite band, which was quite amazing.
It was quite boggling, really. But then, I mean, were you slightly, because I know that, I don't know, every decade has a bit of a twiddly, there's always a few twiddly guitarists who kind of show their, experience on the fretboard. But there were also people like, I suppose, Edge from U2 he stuck to, it felt like, and Neil Young as well at times, they made very solid sort of, I suppose, rhythmic soundscapes really with their guitar, which was, very, solid. Yeah, it wasn't fancy, was it?
I kind of like the Edge's guitar player. I have a problem with Bono. So I can't listen to U2 because I can't stand his voice and I can't stand his lyrics, especially the Feed the World, where he says, in Africa where rivers never flow and trees never grow. I cannot stand him. So I couldn't listen to U2, but I really like the guitar playing in U2.
Yeah, you'll have to just somehow be able to
and
take
he had
them.
a bit of an African guitar influence as well. He must have listened to some African music, sort of from Zimbabwe. He played these really simple sort of circular melodies in some tracks, which I thought were great.
Well, I must admit, I think it was Zimbabwe that the Bundy Boys and the Four Brothers came from, and I really liked that guitar. That was just
Fantastic.
such a, and the rhythm and the bass. But it was the guitar which was just really, I think his name was Biggie something, but it was just amazing. It was, those nights seeing those bands was just amazing. So, good old John Peel. And it was kind of it was quite an education around Africa as well, because then, you had a very different sound, North Africa. And I remember he played a band called Dissidenten, who were partly
I remember them.
Arabic and partly from Berlin, I believe. And it was just, again, were just stunning. But I found it fascinating. And Senegal as well, there was a different sound. And so it was good. And then we got Graceland by Paul Simon. So what the hell?
I hated that record too. But I really love the Soweto music. There was some really great Soweto music from South Africa, like the kind of early Soweto music. Earthworks, this label Earthworks, put out this incredible compilation where you had distorted bass and really sort of a sharp, sort of quite punky sounding guitars and like them hitting bottles or something. There was another record that influenced me a lot. I don't know what happened to it. It doesn't seem to have been reissued or anything. But But that stuff was really great. And
Yeah, there
also
was also
Fela Kuti,
what's that?
Fela Kuti
Fela
from
Cutie, yeah,
yeah,
there was
amazing.
Fela Cutie, but there was also the Stearns record label as
Yeah,
well, which was very
yeah,
useful. And then a bit later was Real World, but I did really like the Stearns because there was another woman, I don't know where she was from, called Belia Bell or something like that. And we
yeah.
went down to London to see her, and again, it was just one of those evenings that was just transcendental because she was like this amazing vocalist, but again a band, and also the atmosphere, the crowd. I mean, it was just everyone was there. Was just I was in the minority, and but everyone was just so danceable. Just really enjoying themselves. It was just a really magical evening. Probably one of my favourite gigs. There you go. You can't help but like those moments, can you? But then
And
there
I
was
guess
also what was that? The John Peel, Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, and all those sort of
oh
artists.
wow, yeah, he was great,
I mean,
amazing.
that was
Yeah,
another kind of education that kind of made you think, okay, I better go and get some more records. And
that
again,
reminds me of this. That reminds me of this TV series that came out on Channel 4 by Derek Bailey about improvisation. He made like a 4 or 6 part documentary called Improvisation on the Edge, and he just went from country to country all over the world, sort of showing different styles of improvisation. I think Nusra Fateh Ali Khan is in that, but also music in Africa, in Kenya. There was even a funeral music in Kenya that was wild, like really completely wild, because the idea is that when somebody dies, that you really party and you really have a great time. You don't sort of hang around being miserable about it. And that also had a big influence, but that was later in the 90s when we started daring to improvise a bit more on stage.
yes,
Before that, we were really playing the songs, and there were bits that sort of changed and stuff. But there was a certain point. Actually, it was with Terry from the X. We had a period when our drummer Kat was having a child, so we started doing duo gigs together. And at first, we said, "Oh, what are we going to do? Should we make songs?" And we decided, no, let's just go on stage without any plan and just play. And it was really fun. It was a complete mess. It was total chaos, but it was so much fun just to dare to do it. And people liked it. I mean, some people
yes,
hated it. Some people hated it. They just said, "You're just making it up as you're going along." And we said, "Yes, that's
this is
the
the point.
idea." And it was such good fun.
Yes. So then, was your first kind of album, Everyday Tomboy, Time Bomb? Was this the first time the band
Oh, the first LP was Humans Fly.
Humans Fly? There you go. My
Yeah,
chronological.
Humans Fly. But what we did is we made a kind of CD that was Humans Fly Everyday Time Bomb, where we combined it because they were both mini LPs, the first two LPs. So the first official LP was a mini LP called Humans Fly, which was recorded by John Vick from the Finny tribe.
Okay, so that
The
was
sec-
that.
that
So
was
that's when that
recorded
came
in
out.
Edinburgh. Yeah,
Yes. And at that stage, because it was kind of, I mean, you might not have been influenced by it, but there was a sort of, I suppose with the 80s, there was like the 83 to 87 period. Okay, that was the Smiths. But there was a real indie pop world. And then they broke up. And then there was this kind of ecstasy moment came in. And then sort of music started to change again with,
yeah,
like the fashion of being, Happy Mondays, Primal Scream, Stone Roses. And then there's sort of the Seattle grunge scene came in. So I just wondered
yeah.
how a band like yourself was just kind of navigating these kind of vague fashions. I know in London you had that North London scene with, My Bloody Valentine and
Yeah, yeah.
the Faith Healers and Sonic Silverfish and people like that.
I think what happened with Dog Faced Hermans, we moved over to Holland in 1990 or 91, just when all that stuff started happening in the UK, and we were in a kind of bubble over there. We kind of firstly we sort of were operating in the squat scene in Amsterdam, and we started touring much more in Europe. We came back to England to play, but we kind of missed the whole that whole thing that you're talking about. And also, I mean, we were aware that it was happening, and also all the American bands started coming over, and there were 10 times more people were coming to the gigs when these American bands would play than when we played. But I mean, that didn't bother us, but we were just fascinated by that because it was kind of similar what we were doing in a way. So we just played all over Europe for like 4 years, Dog Faced Hermans, and in the States, just trying to survive. We were trying to survive. We were living from our music then. We didn't have the dole anymore. So we were we weren't really thinking about scenes, and we didn't really care about, it wasn't like we were trying to be part of that scene or something. We were just making our music, and somehow it was working.
Yes.
So yeah, I don't know how we toured a bit with some of those bands. We played a few times with Fugazi and stuff, and that was really nice. I mean, lovely people also, and we played with the X also, but we never really felt part of a scene.
And what was it?
After we left England.
So were you part of the anarcho-punk kind of anarchist?
I don't think
squad?
we were. We were put in that kind of pigeonhole or whatever you want to call it, but I don't think we were part of that. We played in squats. We played. We didn't play anarcho-punk at all.
No, you don't sound like it at all.
A bit of ska. There's a bit of ska in our music. It was more ska punk than anarcho-punk.
Do you think you would have done better in New York as a band? Because they did have, and I did do an interview with one of these kind of guys who ran a studio with Bill Laswell and Brian Eno at one stage, started it in the early 80s and is still doing it today. And that kind of New York kind of soundscape is a lot looser, isn't it? It's a lot more kind of varied, and like you're saying, that label that James Chance and the Contortions were on, which I now can't remember the label's name, but they were very eclectic, and there was an awful lot of other bands like UT.
We played with Ut as well. In a way, I know what you mean. Yeah, and Sonic. I think Sonic Youth was kind of influential on us, but we didn't really play with them at all with Dogface ever. We played with them with the X later, but who else? Big Black. That was quite important for us. But I don't know. We were also listening to tons of jazz and improvised music, and I think we were listening more to. And we didn't listen. I listened to less and less guitar music and started listening more to African music, rhythmic music, Greek music, Hungarian music. I didn't really care about scenes. It's what you said. It's like you listen to an LP and usually you like about 2 or 3 songs on it. So I never collected LPs. I collected songs. I was always looking up songs. One song that had a really big influence on me was by the Cravats, called Daddy's Shoes, which was like made in 1982 or something. And it was just one song. I liked the Cravats. I thought they were great, but that one song really shifted my brain as far as making songs and how to make songs and something. And that always happened. It always tended to be a song rather than a whole like genre of music or a whole band's back catalogue or something. I can't think of a band where except The Fall maybe. They just made so much incredible stuff in the first 20 years especially.
Yes, and obviously, because we were sort of all very sort of angsty in the 80s, and there was some horrendous disasters. The one in India, Bhopal. You actually wrote a song on this, didn't you? So you didn't quite go full Bono, but was it quite difficult to write a song on such a tragic kind of accident? Mismanagement.
Well, I'll tell you how we write songs. That it doesn't work like that. No one came into the rehearsal room and said, "Hey, let's write a song about Bhopal." It didn't work like that. What happens is we usually go into the rehearsal room and improvise, record and listen and think, "Oh, that stuff sounds really shit. That's not bad. That's really good. Let's keep the good bit." And then from that good bit, we build something, and Marion comes along with vocals at a certain point. And for the first couple of weeks we don't even know what she's singing about, and then at a certain point it's clear that she has some lyrics, and we say, "What's that about, Marion?" And she said, "Oh, it's about Bhopal." So it happens a bit like that. So, and then the song was already kind of made. But once you know what the song is about, what the words are about, it definitely changes how you play it.
Right.
And that's great. For me, that's still the best way to make music, where you don't exactly know what the hell you're doing, and it kind of falls a bit into place by sort of osmosis and diffusion, and a bit clumsily, rather than really, trying to construct songs or something.
Yes.
Never heard like that.
And with the lifespan of most bands, there is sort of a 5-year period of, the 12-month honeymoon, the single, John Peel single, first album, and then the second, slightly third album. And, there aren't many that survive beyond that kind of, that great period. So you've so with the Hermans, did that sort of have a similar narrative on that?
No, I think what happened is Marion. Well, we were living in Holland, so nobody was living in their home place anymore, as in England or Scotland. Our reason for being there was the band, so that's quite an odd kind of pressure that you have. Then it's not like, oh, your family's there and stuff. So actually, we were kind of refugees playing our music and surviving in Holland, and it worked better there for us. But at a certain point, Marion, who's a visual artist, really wanted to do visual art, and she realized she couldn't do that in Holland. It wasn't working for her, and she had to go back to England to do that.
Yes.
So that was one of the big reasons why we stopped. It wasn't like we thought, oh, this is shit now, we don't like it anymore. It really came from people wanting to do other things. And I was playing in the X already a bit at that point, so I nearly died of exhaustion.
Yes.
I was trying to play in two bands who were both working full time at the same moment, so it was kind of exhausting. So, yeah, we kind of stopped at a creative high point. We weren't finished by any means, but we decided to stop, and we all had stuff to do, so everyone just started doing other stuff. It wasn't.
Yes. So when you went to record, was the last album Those Deep Buds?
Yeah.
So this was. Did you know that was going to be the last kind of album by the band?
I can't remember. Probably, yeah. That's very possible. I'm really bad at remembering that kind of stuff. I think it's either. I really can't remember.
No, but you recorded that in Rochdale, didn't you?
Yeah, we recorded it in this, and that was recommended to us by the X, because they'd recorded Oral Gorilla there, which for me is one of the best X sounding records. And John Robb had recommended that place, and this guy Fixon, who we met in London once, he just said, I've listened to all your records and you just haven't, and I've seen you live and you haven't managed to get your sound that you have live. You haven't managed to get that on record yet. I want to do it. I want to try. And we thought, okay, great, go for it. And I thought you did a good job.
How long did the sort of session go for?
A week, maybe less. I don't know. We record stuff fast. We usually record all the backing tracks in 3 or 4 days, and then mix at the same time for another 2 or 3 days.
And there we go. And when you heard it, were you pleased?
Yes.
You got it. It was good.
We were happy.
Yes. Yeah. So then the X, who were this, fabulously famous band in Holland, in Scotland, making lots of sort of
from Scotland to Scotland. That's
Scotland. Good. I know this. It's a rock and roll lifestyle. So how did that feel? Sort of fitted into an established band.
It could have been awful, but because the way they made music was almost identical. Just the process of how they made music was almost exactly the same as how we did it in Dog Faced Hermans. It wasn't. I was super bit starstruck when I first joined, so I was a bit nervous and I'm in the X. But once we started rehearsing together, I thought, this is how we've been doing it for the last 5-6 years. So that felt like such a natural, organic process for me that I didn't feel kind of overwhelmed. And I, it's also age. I was 28, I think, when I moved to Holland. So it was just totally exciting to be in this Amsterdam squat scene, playing in my favorite band and touring, and really playing to like 3 times as many people as I was used to, which was great.
Yes, I would imagine it was quite something. You know,
Yeah,
it's
it was really exciting.
and also I guess at that stage, when with a band like the X, is it the case that you just can sort of completely focus much more on what you want to do? You're not influenced particularly by record companies or fashion or any sort of
Yeah.
media pressure, thinking, "Oh my God, if we don't make it now, we're never going to make it."
Well, the thing is, we had the same attitude with Dog Faced, which is also why we didn't make it. We weren't driven to make it at all. We just kept putting our records out and selling the amount that we did and surviving from it. And we just thought that was the way to do it. We didn't expect any more than that, and we weren't going to work with a major label. We were all clear about that. We were never offered to work with a major label, so I mean, why would they? But
Yes.
so the X, in that sense, the X had the same kind of politics as well, and they were probably more organized. In general, in Holland, the sort of level of organization, especially in the squat scene, was quite amazing, and you could do everything. If you had a van, you fix it yourself. If you need a rehearsal space, you build it yourself, and that was really quite a revelation for me.
Yes, God, you wouldn't get that in England, not with political people in the 80s.
We just maybe not then. Now I think you do now, but I think at that time that wasn't. Though we actually did that a bit in Scotland because we had to build our own rehearsal room in Scotland, in Edinburgh. Because when we were first rehearsing with Dog Faced Hermans, you know Jimmy Boyle from
Yes.
in Glasgow. He set up a place in Edinburgh called the Gateway Exchange, and he gave us a space, a wash house next to the Gateway Exchange, and he said, "Go down there and dig a hole and build a rehearsal space for yourself." And we did that, and we sort of created a musicians collective for all the bands in the area. The Gateway was like a place where people that had been in prison or heroin addicts would go to as a sort of halfway house between leaving prison and going back into society. And they would go there, and you'd have these big sort of open sessions where people would talk about their time in prison and stuff. So it was quite an amazing place to be in.
God, that
And
sounds
also
like
to make music there.
yes, I would imagine it had a certain vibe on it as well.
I don't know where Jimmy Boyle is now. We've kind of lost track of him.
Yes. Did you ever play in that sort of? Is it Christiana? Is it Denmark? This kind of
Copenhagen.
Copenhagen. Did you ever play there?
Played there a few times with different bands and things. Yeah, it was all right. I don't know. It wasn't like, I mean, but I think by the time I played there, it had a bit of a kind of weed smoking sort of Rasta vibe.
Right.
It was all right, but I didn't find it this kind of sort of hard-edged place or something. It didn't seem. I don't know. It was
yes. Were you? I mean, because obviously a lot of bands, especially from the UK, who had ticked into that box, were all getting very, political, and they wouldn't do an interview without saying the word anarchy quite a few times. I mean, did you sort of balance that kind of side of your personality, or did you sort of just have a healthy skepticism about everything?
I think I was arrogantly skeptical about everything. I was a bit nihilistic. I feel like I'm more open-minded about things now. But I think it was also really healthy to do that. We just resisted. We resisted anything corporate and anything that would be trying to control what we're doing. And we wanted to have total control of every aspect of our musical life. And that takes a lot of work, like fixing your own van. Sometimes we were fixing the van the day before touring, so we couldn't rehearse, and your hands are freezing, and you can't rehearse because you have to fix the van. So that maybe even the music sometimes paid the price because we wanted to do everything ourselves. And I think that's great that we did that then, and we had the energy to do that. At a certain point, we figured out maybe it's better to take the van to a garage and get it fixed. But that was later when we could. We got a bit more from gigs. We got a bit more money from gigs, so we could afford to pay.
Yes.
Pay that. I mean, we did it from necessity as well. We just So yeah, we were never looking for a label to help us with that or give us an advance. So we decided we have to do it by ourselves, and that was a kind of stubborn way that we just assumed that's how you do it. And that right from the start we had that. It didn't kind of change, and it
Yes.
still hasn't changed.
But there wasn't, but it didn't, I mean, with a lot of those punky anarchist bands, there was like, I could never tell if they were really that genuine about it or whether there was a bit of a fashion badge I mean, I just found it a little bit, I'm not very good when anybody kind of pushes an agenda too much. I
Yeah, I
find
agree.
myself just
Yeah,
going, well, can I just
yeah,
stand slightly just behind you? So when we go to that protest, you're just right there in front of me and you haven't just scarpered around the back, and
yeah.
and I'm sort of getting bashed by the police. There was just a lot of that going on. And I even sort of, I don't know, I suppose even bands like Crass, where sometimes I just, I know Penny Rambo, is quite a genuine person on that front. But there was an element where, everyone has to have a certain look. Everyone has to have a certain style. Everyone's got the haircut. It's almost like we're all individual, but actually, you can guess the members of the band if you had a sort of a group of 100 people, because there was like, oh yeah, you all look like members of Crass, don't you? Or
Yeah, I know the scene you're talking, and I know what you're talking about. I don't know. I didn't feel like we were part of that at all. And also, when I saw the X for the first time in a pub in Sheffield, I thought they were the roadies when they came on. I had the same thing with the Three Johns because I expected them to be dressed up with Mohicans and black leather jackets, and they came on dressed in kind of normal clothes, and they started moving the gear about, and I thought they were setting up the gear for the band to play, and then they started playing, and I thought, oh, this is the band. So, and I thought with a lot, I said that in this last show, I thought a lot of the bands that we played with in the 80s, they were like really normal looking people that played really abnormal music, and there was a lot of really really shit music played by very abnormal looking people as well. So I don't know. I guess you choose. I mean, for me, the reason for being in a band was to play music. It was really to do with music. It wasn't to do with a look or anything else. And that's maybe why we're still doing it, because we really wanted to play music, and that's why we didn't earn any money from it. It didn't come from a kind of we want to get rich or. And of course, there was a political side to it, and we were part of that political scene. But I didn't feel like we were this kind of flag waving fuck the system thing. That Marion's lyrics were never in that direction. She was much more kind of subtle or something. I don't know. She was talking about all sorts of things, and she was also political, but it wasn't in your face the way you described. But I know what you mean. There was a lot of that. That's why I don't really think the X or Dog Faced were an anarcho-punk band, even though whenever you see it written anywhere, they're described as anarcho-punk. The X put out a double single in 1986 of the Spanish Civil War. And I think that also gave them a bit this label of anarcho-punk, because it's about the anarchists, and it was quite punky. So they got kind of put in that. But I never
yes.
thought of the X as anarcho-punk at all. It's when I think of Kat, the drummer, the way she plays drums in this kind of African pattern system, and the way Terry plays guitar. I mean, of course, he was inspired by punk and that, but for me, that was the beginning of something that then they took and they made their own sound and their own world. And that's the same with all these bands, that some of the bands like the Membranes, they still play, and they came out of this punk scene, but they just make their own music now with their own sounds, and they're still playing because they love to play.
Yes, absolutely. So what was the
other reasons?
first studio album with the X? Was this the one Mudbird? Was that your
That I
first?
played on.
Yeah.
No, the first one I played on is with Tom Cora. It's called Scrabbling at the Lock.
Scrapping at the Lock.
Yeah, and Tom Cora was a cello player, a New York cello player. And just as I joined the X, he also appeared, and we invited him. We did a couple of LPs with him.
Right. I've got
And
you.
we did a series of 6, 7-inch singles as well. One with Hungarian folk music, one with Kurdish music, one with improvised jazz music, one with hip hop. We did all these different styles, but that never really came out on a CD. That's just came out as 7-inch singles. So it's a bit of a collector's thing. We have to put it out on a CD at some point. So those are the first two things that I did with the X. One was playing with Tom Cora, and then this series of 7-inch,
which was quite something, wasn't it? Yes. And then, I mean, how did you cope with, with a band that seems much more like the band are going to keep going, like with members coming and going? How does that kind of influence I was going to say energy of a band? Just being able to sort of cope with somebody leaving, especially some of the main characters who've been there from the start.
Yeah, I hadn't experienced that before. That's true. That's an interesting question, because with Dog Faced Hermans, we all started together and we stopped together, and we had no other members in between. With the X, there has been people passing through. I don't know. That's a good question. I think Kat and Terry were really there from the moment I joined the X, and they were there up until just before COVID still. So for me, that was really the core two musicians that I'd been playing with for 30 years. And that hadn't changed, or hasn't changed. And then other music, we had two new singers, and I think the drums are really important for this, because the rhythm, especially because of the way we play music, it comes from the rhythm. I think if the drummer had changed, I think that would have been much more of a challenge for me to continue. And also if Terry had left, because Terry really, he was there from the very beginning, and the way he plays guitar, really, when I first saw the X, that was the thing that caught me at first. I thought, this is great. I'd love to play with this guy. So the fact that those two members stayed for so long is probably part of the reason why I also stayed so long, is because I think they're just both incredible to play with.
Yes.
But it's definitely true also psychically, when a band member leaves, the balance just changes immediately. It's really when Luke left the band, that was really, really difficult, because he was really one of my favorite bass players, and a fantastic bass player. And that was really a challenge at first. I just thought, whoa, how are we going to adjust to that? It's really like a kind of weird dysfunctional family, and suddenly somebody leaves. So yeah, no, that's funny. That's an interesting question.
Yes.
And now I don't know what we're doing. We're waiting.
But when Joss left, who had been the I mean almost the front man.
I know, yeah.
How did that? What was that kind of experience like?
Really difficult at first, yeah. For me especially, because I was Joss wanted to leave at a certain point, but I found that really difficult, because I love the way Joss performed, and he's not a singer at all. He's hardly musical. That's not what he was trying to do. He's more like a declaimer. He just rants and shouts, and occasionally sings a melody or a line, but that's not really his intention. It's almost a bit like if Mark Smith had left the Fall.
Yes.
That. So at first, our first thought was, well, why don't we just do a kind of instrumental version? And then we just thought, nah, that's not going to work. So we started looking for a singer, and we found someone that we liked. We knew his stuff for Arnold. We knew his stuff from his other bands, and we just tried it. And that's all you can do. I mean, playing in a band is a continuous experiment. You try things out, and either it works or it doesn't work. And it worked.
Yes.
We had no idea. I mean, I think probably some people thought, nah, you can't have the X without Joss. So then they didn't come anymore. But new people came, and we had a new audience as well. And also sometimes a younger audience came, which was fun.
Yes. But it's kind of interesting. Yeah, I mean, I suppose I often wonder, the legacy of a band. How do you judge as one? Because it's almost like, is this going to possibly be a bit different with the X? But there was the cover bands, weren't there, that started, and when the first few cover bands started, it felt a bit weird. But now we're starting to accept the cover bands ish, I mean,
Yeah.
that's possibly better than nothing, but then I don't know, perhaps it isn't. I don't know, it's a bit tricky. But then, like we listen to classical music that's, hundreds of years old, and we're kind of happy with that. So how do one keep that, do you write the musical of, the Dog Faced Hermans and the X, I don't know, Britpop the musical. I don't, it's kind of tricky, isn't it? Do you make a stage play of it, or do you do sort of improvised dance to capture that moment?
I think we don't. Anyway, we don't. We never play the old songs. We've forgotten them, and like when we go on tour, we always play a new set, mostly that the audience hasn't heard because they've only heard the old records, and we haven't recorded the new stuff yet.
Do you find that easier as a band? Because you think, Christ, I just have no idea how we used to play the old songs either. So it's just going to be a nightmare. Let's just stick with what we're playing at the moment, because at least we know them.
Well, it's just songs have a life, and there's a certain point where you just think, I don't want to play this anymore. Even when people shout, "Oh, play State of Shock" or something, you just don't feel like playing it anymore. So we don't. We're not going
to... I know Rob Lloyd of the Nightingales, he just sticks with his kind of latest albums. And
yeah. I mean, that makes... I mean, for me, that always... And you always feel like this is our best stuff. That's a bit of a cliche where you say, "Oh, this is the best song." But if you don't have that feeling, then you should stop. Then you shouldn't be playing if you don't feel it. But actually, with the Nightingales and actually the Membranes, I think their latter stuff is probably better, because especially the Membranes, I always thought the production was a bit not that great on their early stuff. Actually, I always thought it sounded except Spaceships. That sounds amazing. If you listen to that song, I don't know how they did it, but the bass sound on that is incredible. But the thing is, I really think if it doesn't matter what all the audience, which period the audience like. The band has got to like what they're doing, and the band has got to like the new stuff. If they don't like the new stuff and they just start playing the old stuff all the time, that's a bit sad, no?
Yes, it is.
I mean, it doesn't really make sense. And with the X, it's the same. When we go in the rehearsal space, we haven't got any clue what's going to come out, because nobody writes the songs. It's the same. We're making them on the spot. So if we don't come out with anything, then that's it. It's finished. And that hasn't happened so far. At least we don't think that we have to stop yet, because we always come up with a set. And it takes time. It takes time to become good as well. And for me, that's fine.
Yes. And so when you recorded Catch My Shoe, which was the first album with Arnold,
yeah,
what was it like, the rehearsals for that and the practicing, because obviously that was quite a different dynamic.
Yeah, we had to get used to it, but I think because the last period with Jos, the old singer, it went a bit stale and a bit down. It was kind of exciting to have a new person there who had lots of ideas, lots of energy, and really wanted to make new songs. And so that also helped, that gave it a kind of fresh, and we had to adjust. But we're also used to playing with, we're improvising a lot, so with lots of different musicians. So we're used to playing with other musicians anyway, and guests join the X all the time. So in the beginning, maybe this felt a bit like we have a new guest, but he's a permanent guest, and he became a permanent guest. So for me, that's fine. It's like it wasn't super difficult to work with. Also, because Arnold is such a social person. He's totally open, and he's fun to be with, and that's actually as important as anything. So.
Yes.
Side of it, because we've got to sit in a van together for hours and hours every day. That's why bands split up, because they go on 3-month tours and sit in a van with each other for 3 months. Who do you sit in a van with for 3 months?
I know.
Normally,
it's just wrong, isn't it? I know. and people don't. It's like, read the room. Just read the room. Let's say less. Let's not tell me that story again.
But Arnold's also playing has his own project, so he's also gets a lot of satisfaction from doing his project Terry plays with other musicians, I play with other musicians, so we're all busy doing other stuff. So when we come together with the X, it's not like it's the same old thing again. It always feels a bit fresh, because we're not doing it all the time. It's not like 300 gigs a year. It's like 50 gigs a year we were doing.
Yes. And during that period, you started working with an Ethiopian saxophone player, didn't you?
Getachew, yeah.
Yes, I wasn't going to pronounce it. And that must have been incredibly exciting.
Yes. He was great because he couldn't speak one word of English and we couldn't speak one word of Amharic. So when we went in the rehearsal space, we just basically used our kind of musical ears to work on the songs. I mean, all he knew how to say was you solo, me solo, me solo, you solo, you solo, me solo. And somehow we managed to make a whole set with him. And we were playing his songs, so it wasn't like we were writing new material or something. Or rather, we were playing his melodies, and then we would make a kind of our own X-style arrangement of it. And it was great because he doesn't know any of this music. They talk about him being the sort of missing link between Albert Ayler and John Coltrane, and whenever he hears that, he just laughs. He doesn't know that stuff. He doesn't know any of that stuff. He basically played traditional Ethiopian music for 60 years, and when we met him, he was playing in the Sheraton Hotel in Addis Ababa every night, just kind of sad a bit, playing his thing, and that's how he could earn a bit of money. So to go on tour with this punk band, he didn't know what punk was, but he just thought he didn't think we were punk. He said, this is X music, this is the X. And so we were his band. And not really even his backing band, just his band that it was kind of surreal. I don't know how it worked, but it did. And he's a stubborn guy.
And how did that collaboration sort of come about? How did that sort of meeting together? Because obviously, you know,
it grew out of, because me and Terry had been listening to a lot of African music for like 10 years before, or 20 years before. And we discovered Ethiopian music, and we liked that a lot. Like, that really had a kind of big effect on us. And so we knew these especially this Mahmoud Ahmed record called Eramela, which we listened to every day, like for 2 or 3 years. Terry went to Africa for a year and traveled around Africa in a Land Rover, and he ended up the last month in Ethiopia. And when he came back, for him that was the sort of the most incredible place he'd been. And then when he came back to Amsterdam, we started going to Ethiopian restaurants, and the owners of the restaurant said, you should go to Ethiopia and play your music there. And we were like, really? You think people in Ethiopia would like the X? I mean, we were like, yeah, try. You should. So we taught ourselves a few Ethiopian songs from all this stuff that we knew, and we played a few of our own songs. And we somehow organized this crazy tour. We would arrive in a village or a town, go to the police station, get permission from the police to play some, and then we play outside somewhere for free. And hundreds of people would come and listen. And when we played the Ethiopian songs, they were kind of laughing and just really enjoyed it. And when we played the X songs, they loved it. They were dancing. And I thought we would have to play a bit, tone it down a bit. But actually, the more extreme stuff we played, the more they enjoyed it. So it started like that, and then we met Getachew. You know this series of CDs that came out called Ethiopique? There's about 30 or 35 volumes of them now. It's a guy called Francis Falsetto, and he's been putting out this series of Ethiopian music, mostly post Haile Selassie, this period after Haile Selassie died, before the communist era got in, where they really had a kind of explosion of energy, and it was really influenced by soul music and James Brown.
Right.
And he's been releasing these. And Getachew Makuria, the saxophone player, was one of these releases. But actually, me and Terry found his cassette in a cassette shop in Ethiopia, because all the music then, when we were there beginning of 2000, all the music was sold on cassettes at that time. And when we heard Getachew's music, we just thought, this is completely bizarre. It was like this saxophone with it reminded me even of Nick Cave sometimes. There was this kind of organ playing in the background, one snare, and Getachew playing these beautiful melodies on top. And we managed to hook up with them. And then from that, it just sort of... Because we were going to Ethiopia regularly to play, and we managed to meet Getachew. And so we started touring with him. And
God, that's an amazing
adventure.
Story. Yes. It must have been hard to sort of, after that project, to go back to just what you had been doing previously.
Yeah, we had a similar kind of experience of that with Tom Cora when we played with Tom Cora, this American cello player. We would play in these big jazz festivals and stuff, and it was really wow. And then we would go back to the four piece or the five piece, playing a bit smaller places. But yeah, it took a bit of adjustment, but you adjust.
Yes.
I mean, if you love playing music, it doesn't matter whether... I mean, of course it matters. If you're only playing to 5 people, you might think, okay, let's knock it on the head. But if you feel like there's enough people coming and they still love the music, whether it's a big project like that or whether it's the X... And to be honest, there's a group of people that like it the best when it's just the 4 of us. They're quite purists, and they just say, we just like the guitars. We don't like all this fancy cello or so. They like all of that. So for us, it's fine to do both.
Yes, well, I think, yeah.
Yes, and it was very sad when Getachew died. That was quite a shock for us. I mean, he was only 84. He wasn't so old, and he was built like an ox. It's like his shoulders were made of stone. So I just thought he was going to live forever. I just didn't imagine him as someone who could get ill, and it went very quick. Like he sort of died very. He kind of got ill and then maybe didn't get the right medicine or something. So
yeah, because was it diabetes he had?
Yeah, and he had gout also, which is from eating a lot of raw meat.
Right.
In Ethiopia, you eat raw meat a lot, so you get worms and gout. But it's delicious, but you have to be a bit careful, I guess. But I think they get sometimes that he just got the wrong medicine, and so we didn't make it, which was very sad. But that was a great experience. We also played in the States with him, which was really fun, in Chicago, in this giant, what's this enormous place called? The Millennium Center or something. Really insanely big venue with Getachew.
And was it a project, an album that toured well? Was it one that the audience kind of responded to positively?
Totally, yeah. I mean, we played in a lot of world music festivals. Yeah, if you want to call it world music, whatever you call it, especially in France, like really big festivals. They loved because there was. I mean, people started to know this Ethiopian music also because the guy who put it out is from France, so it was very well distributed in France. So it went great. We played in jazz festivals, world music festivals, and rock festivals with Getachew. We could pretty much play anywhere. It was really a spectacle.
Yes.
And there was 10 of us, I think. It was quite a big band, or eight or 10 of us. Plus Malaku, who's a dancer who runs an amazing place in Addis Ababa, a kind of bar where they have traditional music. So it was really a spectacle. It felt like a circus.
That's amazing. So when you sort of came home and then that project was finished and you were thinking, right, next album, this is going to be enormous doors. Did that feel quite hard to know how to pick up the baton again? And
that was also with a brass section. So that was nice. That was with 4 extra musicians who were friends of ours. Ken Vandermark, who's this great saxophone player from Chicago. Roy Paci, I don't know if you know Roy Paci, the legendary. Roy Paci also plays on Catch My Shoe. He's a Sicilian trumpet player, and we met him actually 25, 30 years ago. He joined us. We had an ex-orchestra where we had a 20-piece orchestra, and there's a band called Zoo from Italy who played very kind of jagged, thrashy, punky noise guitar, and he used to play the trumpet on top of that. Really incredible sort of sharp trumpet. So we met him from that. But he later he became a kind of a pop star in Italy, and he did also chat shows and stuff, and he's quite a celebrity. So we didn't see him for like 15 years, and then we invited him to join Brass Unbound, and he was totally up for that. So that was great. And Walter Veerbos, who's from Amsterdam, and he's part of the Amsterdam. Amsterdam has an incredible scene of international jazz improvised musicians who play all over the world, and they've sort of. It's a lot of musicians who come to Amsterdam, and when you come to Amsterdam as a musician to work, you usually don't leave. Somehow you survive. Especially 20 years ago, there was a big support here so that musicians could actually get paid for what they do. So musicians have stayed. So we have a great scene of amazing players. So we were lucky in that sense to have someone like Walter, who's this incredible trombone player. So that was really fun. And also, it was kind of running parallel with Getachew for a while, because Getachew hadn't died when Ex-Brass Unbound first started.
Yes. How do you find just on that slight, with Amsterdam, how does that compare to your experiences of going to Berlin in the sense of just very vibrant places with quite kind of amazing history, especially Berlin?
Yeah, it's really different. Amsterdam's tiny. Amsterdam's like 700,000 people, and there's about, there's a very high concentration of great musicians for such a small populated city. That's for sure. I mean, if you think about the number of people who live in Chicago, or New York, or Berlin, it's much bigger. I don't know. I love Berlin. It's great, and there's also a great scene of musicians there. What's your question?
Yeah, no, it was just that you were talking about that concentration, and I know that Berlin had a kind of quite an energy when the Berlin Wall was up, because obviously that was the place that you could go if you were German and wanted to avoid national service, wasn't it? So you got a certain vibe, didn't you? And I just wondered, as you're sort of very European now, what it was like, being in different cities and experiencing different cities.
Yeah, we're always there for 24 hours. It's so weird. I mean, I've been to Berlin a few times and stayed for a bit if I've recorded, and then you have a very different experience. When you're just passing through and you're playing for 24 hours, it's great. It's really exciting, but it's not how you get a real impression of a city. Berlin's amazing. It's great. I'm going there soon, actually, to play. There's a great drummer there called Tony Buck. I'm going to play a couple of gigs with him. And we also played with him for years. An Australian drummer. He plays in a band called The Necks. But there's so many musicians in Berlin, so many great musicians. It's true. And I don't know.
So what was this period?
Exciting.
The period for the band between Enormous Doors and 27 Passports, because there's obviously quite a gap at this point in the band. What was happening then? I know you do quite a lot of solo projects, but what was the band's kind of general status at that stage?
I think when Getachew died, that really floored us for a bit. That was it kind of took the wind out of our sails, because none of us were really expecting it. And I think we needed to recover from that. So I think we took a bit of time off. I think we were partly a bit exhausted, because we'd just done these projects with him, and they were quite kind of, we traveled a lot with him. So I think we took some time off. And then when we decided to come back together, that's the thing that I like. Then again, we thought, okay, let's go small. We don't need to again do another kind of, because people said, okay, so which African musician are you going to invite next to play with? And we were like, it doesn't work like that. We didn't think, oh no, who should we invite now? We just thought, what do we want to do? And everyone wanted to make music a bit concentrated again and consolidate. And again, see if we can still do it. It's always a question mark that you. So that took a long time.
Yes,
sure. Which that's also to do with age. As you get older, we get a bit slower, and I have children. Arnold had children. Terry's children have grown up, and Kat's children have grown up. And me and Arnold were late with kids, well, especially me. So that also took time. My son is 8, and so this period when we started working again, we just had to tour less, and it just took longer. It's just, and we didn't feel this pressure to, we just done this massive project with Gitachu. We didn't feel this thing that we had to, go for it again. I think we needed a bit of time.
Yes, absolutely. And how do you sort of keep everything ticking over, just kind of life-wise? Do you have to have a sort of another side hustle to keep paying the rent?
No, we're all playing in well, if the side hustle is probably all the little side projects that we do with other musicians. I have about 4 or 5 duos with different musicians, so over a year I can do 20 or 30 gigs with them, and that pays the rent. And then the way we work with the X is we pay ourselves a wage every month, and that's steady. And
Right.
that we get from the income of the gigs, from record sales, because because the label is our label. All the money comes back to us, so it's just enough. I mean, we live simply. It's we live on the edge. We don't have a buffer or anything. If the band stopped, like in this COVID period,
Yes.
we couldn't pay ourselves. At a certain point, we couldn't pay this wage anymore, and it was tough. Like, luckily, the Dutch government gave us a bit of money, like, to help us out. But I realized we've been playing in this band for 40 years, but if we don't play, there's no money immediately. It's not like, it's really hand to mouth. And that was quite a thing. I mean, for me, it wasn't a frustration, but it was a realization. I said, we could live for 6 months without doing anything, and then the pot was empty. So
Yes, that's
how it is.
That's
quite work.
It is, yes. Well, I know Lemmy from Motorhead used to always have the same thing, that you'd put the album, do the tour, have a couple of weeks off, and do it again, because that was the job. It wasn't.
And also X Records don't. It's not like we don't make our money from the records. We make a bit, but it's not. If people want to spend 10 quid on the X, they usually want to go to the gig and not buy the record. And I think that's a good idea. We don't have commercial sounding records, so we don't get a lot of radio play. We get a bit, but it's not like some bands that probably have the same number of people coming to the gigs, but they sell more records. That's never really been the case with the X.
Yes.
Also because we run the label ourselves, and we don't have time to do a massive, if you want to really do it, you would need to work full time just on running the label, and we can't do that. So it's this thing of trying to do everything. We're still doing that.
But then at least you haven't got one of those. At least you haven't got one of those stories which a lot of people have, where they never made a penny, they never saw a penny, but they would have thought someone must have done okay from this band.
Yeah, it was funny hearing your interview with Dave Parsons, actually. Also, because he said that the 2 bands that he lost money from was the X and the Shrubs, because every time he sold an X record, he lost a quid, and he sold tons of the single, 15,000 or something. And I just thought, wow, that's like, I mean, he really tried to put music out for all these bands, but it's like he couldn't say no because he loved the music so much. But as a sort of business package, it was doomed to failure, because none of those bands were ever going to sell more than 1,000 or 2,000 records. But they were amazing bands, some of them.
Yes.
What is that about? It's always been like that.
That is a bit much, isn't it, really? So does that mean with dear old Dave? Yes, I know there was.
How is he?
I think.
Do you have contact with him?
Just on, just occasionally, but nothing, nothing beyond that, really. But he seems okay. Everyone has their story, don't they? So does that mean that you're quite a lot of stories? Yeah. Have you seen Dunst's film?
No, I want to see it. I saw Dunstan. not long
Dunce.
ago, but I haven't seen his film.
Yes, I want to see
Dunce,
the
Dunce, Dunce.
Dunstan.
No, I haven't seen it. Yeah,
Yes.
is it
What
good?
happened? Well, I haven't seen it either, but it's all about what happens when the music stops.
Oh, really?
Have
Oh,
you
shoot.
seen the trailer?
Yes, but I didn't. I couldn't totally get that from the trailer. But no, I want to see it.
What happens when you're no longer on stage? I think that's the gist of it,
Oh God.
dealing with the existential problems of no longer being in the band on the stage. I think searching in his
Ooh.
soul for the purpose.
So that's the opposite of the Nightingales one. That was such
Yes,
that was such a heartwarming film to watch. I really loved the way Stuart and Rob Lloyd just giggled like two mates giggling. I thought it was great. It was a good
yeah.
format.
And I love, and also I love the fact that there's this sort of bit of a Duran Duran sort of kind of connection um, with that Birmingham scene, because I recently did an interview with a musician who's put together a compilation of that very early Birmingham sound from 1978 to 1982, and
Yeah,
with people like, I don't know, the guy from Stephen Duffy and people like that, they're
yeah.
very early bands, and various other punky, post-punky bands. And John Taylor was kind of one of those bass players in a band who probably never even did an album, just did a single. So it's quite nice. There's a few little connections like that.
And I totally forgot about We've Got a Fuzz Box. I
Yes.
totally forgot. And Ted Chippington was also in that. I remember seeing that, thinking, "What is going on?" When Rob Lloyd was suddenly a pop star.
Rocking with Rita. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was quite something actually. I actually, the most amazing thing, because as from the interview, was because there was a film about Danny Fields, who was this kind of
yeah.
funny little mover and shaker in America and New York, especially, and managed the Ramones. And there was this kind of clip about, with Danny and the Nightingales. And I just thought that was fantastic.
Yeah,
It was just, and I love the fact when he was going around the back of that car place going, oh yeah, I slept here a few nights.
yeah, yeah. That was great. It's
Yes.
true, right? You have the feeling that he doesn't make anything up.
Yes, it was a charming film. So then what's the plan for the future after, the last couple of years? Obviously went and looked at your archives in the attic and thought, should I write a book? Perhaps not yet. Perhaps I will. But then, are you sort of planning any more releases in the next 12 months
With who?
with the band or anybody?
Or with the ex?
Yes.
I mean, with the ex, I don't know. We have to. We're back at the stage where we have to go into the rehearsal room with a big question mark over our head, which is my favorite bit in the process.
So
Where
when
you
was the
start
last
making.
time you saw each other in that space?
Oh, in the rehearsal space.
Yes.
Wow, maybe 3 years ago.
Right.
I mean, since COVID, we haven't. It's been just a blip that's gone. Kat lives in Germany now, so it's a bit more complicated. Arnold lives in Amsterdam. I see both of them regularly. There's an Ethiopian restaurant here, and we eat there regularly, so that's great. And I sometimes do duo gigs with Terry, which is really fun. We still do that. I don't know. That's a good question. Maybe I have to answer that in 6 months from now.
Right.
I have no idea at the moment. We're in a kind of we're kind of treading water and waiting a bit. We really decided not to try and play during the COVID period, like try and play in places where people couldn't dance and just stand. We just thought that's not going to work with this band.
Mm.
So anyway, we just said no to all that. So I've been doing some online gigs, but more kind of experimental stuff where it works in that kind of space, and playing with I've been playing with this Greek composer, a Cypriot Greek composer called Yannis Kyriakidis. I've been playing with him for years, but we did quite a few gigs during the lockdown because it sort of seemed okay to play to a cameraman and a sound guy. But with the X, that just wouldn't have made any sense. That would have been
Yes.
daft. So no, I don't know. I'm playing lots of music with different musicians. at the moment, just more experimental stuff, which I really love doing, and just doing small tours and making music at home with a computer and making this radio show.
Yes.
I'm just busy with music and not making any money from it still, but just enough to survive and feed my children.
Yeah. So, yeah, I know. I mean, does that sort of fill you with a certain anxiety thinking about the X, whether you need to say, are we going to do it or aren't we? And if we're not going to do it, can we just say it and be done with it?
I think we still don't really know what's going to happen. We don't know ourselves. I think we really need to, because we have had no real contact, and like also not playing. If you don't play together, then the whole thing doesn't exist. As long as you're not playing together, the band doesn't exist as far as I'm concerned. Then it's just this thing that's sort of people like to listen to on records or on Spotify, but we're not a band because we're not playing together. As soon as we're playing together, we're a band again.
Yeah. Do you feel the other members of the band are also in that same emotional limbo?
Yeah, probably. We're kind of wondering. We're wondering. We want to do something, but we're wondering how and what and where and when. And we're not in a hurry. Somehow we're not in a hurry. I think we decided to wait till the end of this year. And everybody said that they have enough projects to do, other projects to do, that we can just get on with doing our other things. And that's quite nice because there's tons of things you want to do sometimes and you can't do them because you're busy touring or something. So everyone's busy doing their stuff. And the plan is to sort of get back together at the end of the year, meet and see then what happens. That's what I mean. I'd probably be able to answer you better in 6 months.
Yes, well.
And that's kind of a luxury position to be in, that we can do it like that. That we're not under some pressure or we have to. It's got to come from inside us. There's got to be an urgency to go back in to the rehearsal room and make some songs.
Yes. God, that's interesting, isn't it? I mean, just lastly, I mean, if you could have said something like your 16, 18-year-old self starting out, is there anything that you would have wanted to have said to them, or felt like, as much as people say, oh, they would have ignored me, I just wondered if there was any little top tips that you would have thought that would have been quite useful.
What, to a 16 or 18-year-old who's starting to play music?
Well, to yourself, if you could have said something to yourself starting out back then.
Okay.
I just wondered if there would have been just something from the decades of experience and ups and downs and wisdom that you might have just said, oh, yes, that would have been a really sensible thing. Or you could have said, no, it's all fine.
I wouldn't say, no, I wouldn't, I'm not a blind optimist. There are some things I'm sure we could have done better, or I could have done better. We were very stubborn in the start, and probably because of that ended up like not doing things. I don't know. No, I'm kind of glad we didn't do it. We didn't do anything that I feel like we compromised or something. We were very, very principled that we wouldn't deal with any shitheads, like any big labels or any of that stuff. And not do any stuff with advertising or any of that stuff. I don't know. We just didn't want to sell our ass down the street. I don't know. No, I'm quite happy.
Yes, well, then that is the main.
I still want to play. I still really want to play. And I mean, I don't have much money, but I know tons of musicians that have tons of money and they don't feel like playing. So I don't know.
Did the last 2 years, was that difficult to get motivated to play, to sort of pick up your guitar or think about it?
I didn't touch it. I didn't play for there was about a year and a half where I just didn't play. And I just made stuff on the computer, because I also make music on the computer. So it's not like I wasn't making music. I just didn't play guitar.
Yes.
And I just made music at home, and I listened. The last year and a half, I listened to so much music. That was fantastic. And that's also how I got into doing this radio show once a month, because I started listening again. I realized I wasn't listening to enough music because we're so busy playing all the time. Your ears get tired and you don't feel like listening to the music and that much music in the van.
Yeah.
So the last year and a half, I've just listened to tons of stuff, and it's great. There's so much great music happening now. Not just like I'm not, it's not like there was only good music from when I was young. There's fucking amazing music every year comes out, and there's so much to listen to. So that's great. That's what I've been doing, listening. And hopefully that's what the rest of the band have been doing. So when we come together, we'll have all this stuff in our heads, and something new will come out of it.
Yes. Who holds the kind of the key to the lockup? Do you have a sort of a band lockup?
We do have a band lockup actually, where all our gear is. Yeah, Terry's got it. It's in the countryside. It's a rehearsal space in a village near where he lives, because he lives in the countryside.
Yes.
But my amp is here, so that's fine. And
yes.
I can practice. I don't practice. I only practice guitar when it's with people. I don't practice by myself. I never did that. So
your fingers are going to have an amazing shock, aren't they?
Well, they did, because I started playing again recently, and for the first week it killed me. It was like super painful. They were bruised almost. But now they're okay again, because I've been playing again quite a bit with different groups and stuff.
Excellent.
And I'm going next week on tour to Berlin also, which is nice, with a Scottish performer called Genevieve Murphy. She's great, very funny, and she plays bagpipes and tells great stories, and does a bit sort of electronic stuff.
Blimey, that's very eclectic.
Eclectic.
Well, I've never come across someone playing bagpipes.
It's great when she plays bagpipes, and they're loud. It's like she doesn't have to be amplified, and they're as loud as my electric guitar. They have such a volume. I mean, I guess it was an instrument of war to sort of intimidate the English. So
yes, well, I would imagine. What was her name again?
Genevieve Murphy.
Yeah.
She has a CD as well. That sounds more kind of sort of more pop electronic, but the stuff that we do together as a duo is kind of quite rough with guitars and stuff, and a bit improvised. But she has a great delivery. Her voice is fantastic, and she's a very good storyteller.
Yes,
and very funny.
This was amazing. Well, look, Andy, thank you ever so much for this. It's been amazing. And if you want, I can always send you a link to the feature, and you can always post it on your Facebook page or whatever page you might use. But thanks again. And yes, I will keep listening to your show, which will be very interesting, because like you, it's quite nice to hear new music, as much as actually there's a lot of music that I missed previously that I'm fascinated by. So it's all right. I don't completely live in the past, by the way, but I do have a yes.
Do you like listening to like electronic music, like rap, or like English UK rap, like stuff like that, or trap, or this stuff?
Oh, well, I'm always curious and interested in anything that's coming out. Having that sort of obsession with John Peel back in the day, there are still bits that, it's a bit like you were saying, that you just kind of, something just catches your ear and you just think, God, I love that song. And that's it. And the album, forget the album. I just want to hear the song that they've done.
It's weird because you have to. I mean, I just search tons and tons of different styles, and then suddenly something stands out, and I don't see any logic into why I like that. It's not like it doesn't make total sense, but it's really not one style. But there's always something that sort of catches. So I try and put them together in a show, and it's just like a fucking mess of different. It's like really all over the place. But for me, that's the kind of radio show I would also listen to, and that's that really comes from John Peel.
Well, I must admit, when I do a show, I think Oh God, I don't want too many fast and hard songs. I'd rather have. I just want to drop that to an acoustic song just for my own sanity. And then, oh no, it'd be quite
Yeah.
nice to play something. You know, I just like to juxtapose stuff. Actually, I just really don't like. I wouldn't want to just play 30 minutes or 60 minutes of one thing. You know, because
Yeah.
I just find it's just too much. So it's quite nice to put you know, just to vary the whole genre. You know, it's like
Yeah.
that's it really.
I mean, I contradict myself because with that last show, I did that with the 80s stuff, and it is, but it's quite varied still. I mean, it is a bit this sort of guitar punk, and like the character of it is you can't hear what the words are, and the guitars are really loud. But it's great. It's great. I mean,
Yes.
it's good once in a while to dig into like one thing. There's a great, you know, Rembetika music from Greece.
No.
That's an amazing. It's it's Greek people who were living in Turkey who were sent back to Greece. The Christian Greeks were sent back to Greece, and the Muslim Greeks stayed in Turkey in Izmir. They arrived in the port of Piraeus near Athens, and they kind of went underground and started playing this incredible music. A lot of them were either addicted to heroin or heavy hash smokers, and they just made these beautiful, very catchy, sort of half melancholic, half really happy songs. And the style is called Rembetika, and it lasted from like the 20s till the 50s, and then it became a bit restauranty, and it kind of got a bit clean. It got cleaned up a bit. Also, the fascist government banned the lyrics because the songs were about heroin, prostitution, tuberculosis, like quite dark subjects. But it's
Yes.
it's a great. There's a whole collection of hundreds and hundreds of great songs, and they're all 3.5 minutes long because they were all recorded for 7-inch singles.
Right.
And I want to
Excellent.
do a show on one of those.
Oh, we'll do. Yes, we'll do. I
Because it's
will.
just, I mean, that's one style again, but it's just so it's so it's such a weird these moments where suddenly great music appears, like this Ethiopian period after Haile Selassie died, before the communists came in. You have this period of 5 or 6 years where the musicians just exploded, and that's why you have this great sort of incredibly exciting music before the Derg kind of clamped it down again. And yeah, I think you've had that in periods in different countries. It's not, you know, it's not like that punk is the only free exploded music. It's like it's happened everywhere in different places at different times, and it's great when you
Yes.
find it.
Well, look, I'll look forward to more of your shows.
Yeah, sorry, I'll stop now. I could go on for hours.
No, it's absolutely fine. No, but it's curious. I'm always curious with those kind of musical scenes because it's nice when you find something quite new and interesting to.
Yeah. I'll send you some Rambetica stuff.
Yeah, I would love to hear some of that. And just so you know, your show that you sent. Have you done lots of these, or just is that?
That one that I sent to you was the 8th. I do it once every 4 weeks.
Right.
It's a new station that started in Amsterdam called Echo Box about 8 months ago. They just invited. It's mostly Amsterdam DJs.
Right.
And they try and get you to go into the station and do it live, not pre-record it if you can. They really want it to have this live thing, and then it gets archived later. It's really fun.
Oh no, it is. It is good. Anyway, look.
Yeah. Anyway,
I'll let you go.
Yeah.
But thank you ever so much for this, and I'll keep in touch.
Okay, David.
Take care.
Where do you live? Norwich.
Norwich.
Right,
Have you ever played Norwich?
I think so. I've been to Norwich a few times. I can't remember.
It's got a nice cathedral.
No, maybe not.
I don't know. The X. I don't know. Dog Faced Hermans. Did you keep a catalogue of all the gigs you played?
Yeah. I didn't, but Wilf. There's always one person in the band that does that, and Wilf did that. Yes. And in the X, it's insane. If you look at the X website, every gig we ever played is listed, and every band we played with is listed.
That's very impressive.
It's really obsessive.
Well, no, it's good. I mean, because you'd regret it later if you hadn't actually. But
exactly, yeah.
I
And it's
think,
handy because I can't remember anything, so it's good when you can go and have a look. Where did we play how many times have we played in Oxford? I'm going to check if we played in Norwich now.
yeah, I might as well, actually. That'd be kind of good. I mean, it'd be terrible if you had never played Norwich, isn't it, really?
I don't remember it though. What was the club in the 80s in Norwich? What was it
Well, it
called?
would have been the Arts Centre, or it was called
Norwich Arts
Premises.
Centre. That sounds familiar.
The
Norwich.
premises on St Benedict Street and things like that. So there you go, concerts. Do you
West Runton? West Runton?
West Runton?
Is that
That's
near
in North.
Norwich?
That's North Norfolk.
Yeah, maybe we played there.
Did you with the website? Does it have all the previous gigs that you've got? You've
the
done?
X?
Yeah.
Yeah, it has every single gig the X ever played. So you just have to go to the archives, and starts in 1979 in Castricum at the Backer. That was the first gig. Castricum is like a tiny little town by the sea.
History.
So yeah, you can find everything there, and also you can find all the bands we played with and the number of times we played with them. it's mental. Sound engineers, cities we've played, the whole lot.
My God, I can. Yeah, there's a lot, isn't there? I'm just in 1983. That's impressive, actually. That is really it's fantastic. It's. I'm so pleased that somebody has been out there doing it all. Really.
Yeah, that's great. Jos used to do that. The singer, the first singer, he was really into that, and we carried on the tradition.
Yeah, I can't see Norwich yet.
Oh shit! Can't you search for Norwich? Like, how do you do that? Where you just search for?
Yeah, I know. You need no, I don't think there is a search engine, is there? But I might, unfortunately, miss it. Preston, you played Preston.
Yeah.
Harlow, Oxford. You love Oxford, don't you?
We played the 1 in 12 club in Bradford a few times, and we used
Oh
to always,
God, that would have been terrible not to, wouldn't it? The Knitting Factory in New York.
We used to always have to repair the PA first before we played, because they said, the Dutch guys are coming over, they can repair the PA first.
Yeah.
So they'd repair the PA before the gig.
God, 1998, you were really on the road, weren't you?
Yeah, I guess so. There was some years we did a lot, like 100. Well, never more than 100 or so, but and then some years we just did 50 or 60.
Yeah, but there was a lot. My God, yes, the early O years were big ones, weren't they?
Yeah.
Amsterdam.
That's before all the children arrived.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does happen, doesn't it? Right. Look, I'm still going through your list. And did you say the Dog Faced Hermans have a website with that kind of information?
They don't have a website, but we have a list somewhere. But it's analog. I have to dig it up. Wilf made it. I'll have a look.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see where you play.
We did about 350 gigs, Dog Faced Hermans. 300 or 400.
It still sounds brilliant today, doesn't it? The band. I mean, it doesn't sound that like, oh God, that's a bit.
It sounds fresh to me.
Yeah, it does sound good. Sorry, I'm just into 19. No, I don't think you ever played Norwich, actually.
Oh, shit.
Shit, I know.
Oh, no. That's terrible.
I know. But then,
Art Centre sounds familiar, but maybe because
But you played the Colchester Arts Centre instead.
The very first gig we played was Nottingham Musicians Collective, and there were 6 people there. That was a good start.
That was a promising place. Anyway, look.
Did you interview John Robb, by the way?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you must have done.
Yeah, John.
He's great.
Yeah, he is. He's such a dude, isn't he, really? But you'll have to
keeps going.
He is incredible, but yeah, he does his thing, actually. Anyway, look, I'll let you groove on, but take care. Yeah. See you later.
Okay, great, Dave.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that was me in conversation with Andy Moor from the X and also Dog Faced Hermans. A massive thank you for giving me the time for that interview. If you want to contact the band, you can go and Google X, the X, EX, that's it. There is information here, there and everywhere. And also, if you want to contact me, I know, that would be lovely. You can on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, just do C86 Show. Also, these have all been archived. Aren't you lucky? You can find those on iTunes, Podbean and Spotify. So there you go. Keep it positive and groovy. Because frankly, life's just too hard. We just don't bother really. Yeah. Anyway, have a great week. Stay safe.